Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here. And today, out of freaking nowhere, we got a bit of very exciting news that is a little bit more than what it seems to be on the surface. So, while yes, this is another collaboration coming up, it appears that they are testing out some very interesting new mechanics and features with this collaboration, as they often do when they introduce a new type of operation or temporary event game mode. So what collaboration is continuing on? Well, if you are blind, it is the Star Trek collaboration. I have a feeling that not only was this meant to be, a test bed for some new mechanics, but I think this was supposed to be with the first round of Star Trek goodness that we got a few months ago. If you do remember, the Star Trek crossover event was postponed once. And then we got the first Star Trek event, where we got the camouflages for the ships, we got the unique voiced over commanders, and we got the Enterprise D bridge port, which was very interactive and in depth for a event that just boiled down to a bunch of cosmetics. Well, I do believe this operation was supposed to come out with the first half of that content. I should say the first third of that content, because what we're getting here in this collaboration is very in-depth. Again, some potentially very interesting new mechanics and potentially weapons in the future. Talk about that here in a minute. But anyway, my main theory, not my main theory, but my main evidence to support my theory is that if you will notice, this port is the ready room on the Enterprise D. And if you remember, in the original Star Trek crossover, you could open up the ready room door and it wouldn't do anything, but you could open it up, and I believe you were meant to click on the door, it opens, and then you would be teleported to this port screen that is the port for the new unique Star Trek operation. So something happened, I'm assuming because, again, of some of the things that are going on in this operation, that they couldn't get the mechanics hashed out in time, so they just went forth with the cosmetics and such, and this was saved for a later date. Why didn't they just push the whole thing back? I don't know. I'm sure they had a contract with CBS, Paramount, and when you sign a contract with something like that, obviously there are portions of the contract you have to, live up to, so maybe they had a date for the initial event and they had to have it out by then, or maybe they just wanted to get it out as soon as possible because Star Trek. I don't know. That's just guessing. But anyway, the operation is very, very interesting. There's some cool stuff going on with this operation. So it's pretty similar to the D-Day operations in that you can play through them, and as you play through the operation, you will earn upgrades and such for your ship. There is a cruiser, there is I believe, a destroyer, a battleship, and then later on you can unlock a carrier, which is the Enterprise D, and Again, it's the cosmetics that we were buying in the first round of the Star Trek event. The Enterprise camo, it's the Enterprise here. The Vulcan battleship camo for the Gneisenau, that's what you're playing when you're playing the battleship. So forth and so on. So, but it's far more than just a cosmetic change for these ships when you take them into operations. You can now select various types of weapons. You have phasers, you have artillery, which I believe that's just like the default guns you have on the ship. You have pulse phasers. Your torpedoes are now proton torpedoes or photon torpedoes, whichever one belongs to Star Trek, right? And they're not just, again, it's not just a cosmetic change where they're glowy, they're much faster, right? So it is a proper operation, very similar to Halloween events, and this could be why it was pushed back as well. Maybe they realized they didn't have a Halloween event for this year, so they decided to push back the operation until Halloween. Again, I don't know, I am just theorizing here. Along the way, you'll notice that there are some other consumables and other mechanics that have been present in other either temporary modes, April Fool's Day events, or again Halloween events, you have like the AI bombers that you can summon to an area where they will just kind of fly around and then drop bombs on targets. You have, again, similar consumables to previous Halloween events that boost the damage that you're doing, reduce the damage that you're taking in, so forth and so on. One of my favorite things is that there's a consumable called a red shirt, where you will take less damage, I'm assuming by holding the body of a red shirt in front of the incoming fire, as would be appropriate. So there's a bunch of cool stuff there in terms of the consumables and in terms of the weapons that you will be using. The phasers, for example, they are phasers. It's not like they're just dyeing your shells red. It literally works like a phaser, like a beam of light, right? Like, it's basically Soviet shells, right? So that's pretty cool. So it's a very cool operation that you can take part in right now on the PT client. This will be up from today, the day of recording, the 10th through October 15th, so you can get a bit of a taste for it if you want to try it out. So, new mechanics that are potentially being tested out in this event. We're seeing a return of like the team hill, which we've seen that pop up a couple of times. It was in, one or two rounds of clan battles ago where you did have the support consumables being tested out there. Some of those are back here. Again, like the team hill, but what's probably more interesting and probably more eye-raising to a lot of you guys, apparently Wargaming has decided to start testing out missiles. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it seems that the devs have decided to start and see if they can fit anti-ship guided missiles into the game. You see, back in the day, they actually tried this once before, in a manner that's not all that dissimilar to artillery. You would aim, fire, missiles would take off, but they would take longer to get to the target ship than shells did. However, they would do more damage, from what I remember reading about it back in the day. But it was a pretty boring thing to implement into the game. Wasn't that different from artillery, so they shelved it. Now, I do believe that they started to mess with the idea of homing missiles at one point, but I can't remember where I read that. I believe it was on the forums somewhere, and of course the forums have been nuked, so I don't know 100% for sure if that is accurate. But it seems that they've brought them back using the sub-ping mechanic. So if you go into the Star Trek mode on the PT server, you will be able to customize your ship in a variety of ways like we've talked about. And if you select the photon torpedo on the Vulcan battleship, the T'Pol, it's something, alright. You see, actually, this is the third time I've made this video. The first time, I was just going in talking about the Star Trek event, like, okay, cool, we're getting a Star Trek operation mode. Then when I played it, I noticed when these torpedoes got launched at me, these photon torpedoes, right? Like, this is a little sus the way these are acting, because I heard the submarine ping, and I was like, well, and I thought, well, what the hell was that? And then these photon torpedoes hit me, and I was like, oh, that's a little odd. And then I went back and watched the footage and realized they were flying through the air. And then I put two and two together, and here we are remaking this video again. No, I'm sorry, that was the second time I remade the video. And then I realized you could have them on your ship and try them out for yourself. So here we are, third time's the charm. So sure enough, when you select the photon torpedo, it is a separate armament on your ship. You aim at the target ship, click, and it launches the ping. The ping seems to be a bit faster than the sonar ping that we have in game right now with the submarines, but very similar concept. It hits the target ship, and the missiles immediately launch, or the photon torpedoes immediately launch, and fly the way over to the target ship, impact them for a massive amount of damage. Now, do keep in mind, in this mode, there are, of course, consumables and buffs you can pick up that increase the amount of damage your ship and your armaments do. So while, yes, they are one-shotting ships in this mode, it's likely because of all the extra stuff that we're picking up as we go through it. If you notice at the start of the match, I believe I let it rip on a battleship once. Doesn't quite completely kill it, but it gets it pretty dang low. By the end of the match, we're one-shotting full health battleships. Again, it's an operation mode with a lot of arcadey buffs going on in the background, so do keep that in mind as you're watching the footage in the back. But yes, this is pretty crazy, ain't it, fellas? Missiles in World of Warships. We've talked about this before, but this is the first time I believe they've let the public get their hands on at least one iteration of these missiles. Now, The big question, of course, is this testing them out to see if they can work in the live game? Well, they've done a lot of this in the past, where the devs will introduce something in a temporary mode or a temporary operation just to see the player base's reaction and see if they can get a hold of the mechanics of it and understand what's going on and if it's intuitive enough for the player base to, get a hold of. And a lot of times these things are put up in a temporary mode once and we never see them again, like the secondary battery reload booster. That was introduced in, what was it? Not the Pinata Hunt, but one of these temporary modes, and we have not seen it since. So, very well could be that this is just a one-off thing for the Star Trek event, and we never see it again. However, of course, submarines in the Halloween event some years ago, this is the first time we got our hands on them in game, and look where we are a few years later. And it's happened again with other things too, like the support CVs there, support squadrons. Mines have been in various rounds of testing in and out of temporary modes. So obviously, it is a possibility that this could be something they're looking at introducing into the live client. Of course, the big issue is that we don't really have a lot of information at this time, because the article that's talking about the Star Trek operation doesn't really go into too much detail about the operation itself and the new weapons and mechanics that are being introduced into it. So, again, grain of salt, right? And it's really odd that they just let this rip on a random Thursday without explaining, hey, these things are kind of like missiles, right? It's very odd to me that they would do that. That's an interesting decision to make, to say the least, without at least, releasing a full article explaining how everything works. Now, what is interesting, too, is that the shield, I was wondering what the shield was all about when I was playing through this the first couple of times, because, some munitions go straight through it, some don't. I'm like, okay, cool, it's just kind of like a shield, but, what's it really there for, right? But then the photon torpedoes, they cannot get through the shield. So the shield has to be down in order for them to hit. So now it's like, oh, is this shield maybe testing out like electronic warfare or potentially like a Sea Whiz, right? Like, when your Sea Whiz is loaded. Sea Whiz, if you guys don't know, it's the really angry, spinny Gatling gun that can shoot down missiles. It's one of the last line of defense against missiles. But obviously, in an arcade game, it would be something that could very easily, be your missile defense system, right? So is this shield meant to be testing out, Sea Whiz? It's got so many either hit points or so much ammunition, and once it's dispensed all of its ammunition, or if it's been destroyed because of artillery attacks, then you're vulnerable to missiles. Could be that. Could be, again, some kind of like electronic warfare going on, some missile jammer, right, that they could be toying with the idea of, or it could just be a shield, right? So that's pretty interesting now that I've got my hands on it and played it for a bit. So this is going to be very divisive in my mind. There are players out there that have been saying, hey, we're going to get, 1989 New Jersey, 1990s New Jersey, with the Tomahawks and the Sea Whiz. Are we going to get that New Jersey in the game? Because, Wisconsin has been released, and it's, a supercharged Iowa. So the only other way they can go with New Jersey that really respects her history is, the 1980s refit. But missiles. So maybe that's where we're going. And some players have been asking for that for some time. Other players have sworn up and down that missiles will be, the last line in the sand for them. They're quitting the game after that. And obviously, there are some very glaring issues if they do decide to introduce missiles into the game. Most of the ships in game were not around for the age of missiles, at least ship-to-ship based missiles, right? The Yami most certainly was not designed with that in mind. So you run into a situation where it's like War Thunder, where you have, a Sherman fighting some 1980s tank, where it's like, man, there's such, a generational gap in between a Sherman and a 1980s or 1960s era tank that it's just, inherently an unfair matchup. And also, like, again, with missile defense systems, what are you going to do? Give the Yami Sea-Wiz or give it an electronic warfare suite? So where are these missile ships going to go? Are they going to be like tier 12 plus? Are they going to take a page out of Lesta's book, except go in the other direction? Lesta is introducing a new tier that's below tier 1, I believe, where it's like pre-Dreadnought era, armored ships, which is pretty cool. So is Wargaming going to go in the other direction and go into the missile age? Which I think if they do that, that would work. If you have, again, all these missile cruisers and destroyers and stuff, and like, again, Iowa in her 1980s refit, that would be pretty cool. What if these, naval gunnery ships survived into the age of the anti-ship missile, and they got, a Jean Bar with tomahawks on it, or whatever the French anti-ship missile or ship-launched missile system was, right? I think that could be pretty cool and a direction forward for the game. This game is, again, rapidly approaching 10 years old, guys. So new content is very much welcomed. But how it's going to be implemented is, of course, a big question. And unfortunately, right now, we just don't have the information because they haven't said too much at the moment. So I'm eagerly awaiting the full article for the new Star Trek event, and hopefully some clarification from Wargaming going forward, what's going on with these missiles. It could completely just be they added them into the event just for the funds, just for the lulz. If that's the case, cool. That's a bit of a relief to, I'm sure, a lot of players. But again, we just don't know at this moment. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I'm sure this is going to be a very fun and engaging comment section. I will be live streaming here on the channel tonight from around 3:30-ish. Well, not tonight, this evening, from around 3:30 p.m. U.S. Central Time to around 6:30 p.m. U.S. Central Time, so make sure you guys come out for that. We'll be checking out the Star Trek mode and these photon torpedoes a little bit more when we get there. So hope you guys enjoyed. Have a wonderful Friday, wonderful weekend. I hope to catch you guys in the next one.